Hello and welcome to Formula One on Speed Channel. This is the Acura pre-race show for round 5 of the World Championship for 2002, the Spanish Grand Prix. I'm Rick Rule alongside David Hobbs and Steve Matchett. Couple stories we need to talk about as the cars are going out to take a quick look at the circuit before the race. Two big stories this morning, changes in the grid. Both of the Minardi cars have been withdrawn because of safety problems. They lost wings yesterday. They lost another wing this morning. As a result, both Minardis are gone. The other change in the grid, Eddie Irvine has been dropped to the back of the grid because of a problem with a discrepancy in his fuel sample. As a result, his time was disqualified. He is now on the back of the grid. Now, we'll talk more about that in a moment. But first, let's go to Peter Windsor. And Peter, there's now a lot of talk about the changes that happened at Jordan this week.
Yes, they thought this would be quite a bland technical race, Barcelona. A lot of testing here, very difficult to overtake, and it's very much a chassis circuit. However, there's a lot going on in the paddock. Eddie Jordan has announced a 15% layoff of his staff, not necessarily because of the economic slump, but because he felt the Jordan team had been getting fat. There are rumours, of course, that Eddie Jordan has got a new boat which will make its appearance at Monte Carlo in the harbour, but that has yet to be confirmed. Meanwhile, for the West McLaren Mercedes team, this is something of an acid test. They've really owned this circuit since 1998. It won't be a similar story this year, we predict. Michael Schumacher has no doubt about why they were quick in the past.
We should really wait this weekend and see where is McLaren against Williams, where we will be, how far we maybe can be ahead, or is it going to be close if we're a little bit behind. The test has indicated we are a little bit up front, but it's some weeks ago since then. Then you can sort of draw a conclusion.
But can McLaren Mercedes repeat that success from previous years? We spoke to David Coulthard and to Kimi Raikkonen to get their input.
The nature of the circuit, it's got a few slow corners, of course, and then predominantly long, high-speed corners like turn 3 and obviously 12 and 13 to end the lap. So it's tended to be, if you've got a good car aerodynamically that's not too pitch sensitive, then you could do the lap time here. But it is a circuit that tends to go towards oversteer, especially in the race.
It's so much different now when it's hotter, but of course we're waiting and seeing maybe we're going to be much better than any other races this year. But like I said, it's too early and we just need to wait.
Now, since the F2002 Ferrari debuted in Brazil, it has had a killer record. With just a single F2002 on hand, Michael Schumacher used it to win at Interlagos. 2 weeks ago at Imola, well, Rubens Barrichello got his F2002 and joined Michael for a 1-2 in both qualifying and the race. Here in Spain, they will once again start first and second. Now, it's not surprising. There's a lot of talk about Ferrari's domination and that Schumacher really is almost a lock to win his 5th World Championship. Schumacher, though, as always, doesn't want to hear about it.
The point is that we are not so dominant, and even if we are dominant in this moment, maybe for the next 1 or 2 races, it can change very quickly. And I've seen this very often in the past. I've seen this 97. We were sort of nowhere. I remember testing we had before Silverstone and Magny-Cours. We were nowhere, 1.5, 2 seconds off the pace. And do you remember who won 97 Magny-Cours? It was myself, because we made a little modification and suddenly we were there. And it's little things, and in Formula One it goes so fast, the development, and the moment you feel secure, you will lose. And that's what I want to express, that you can never feel secure, although we maybe have a very good car, but you don't know how long this lasts.
Methinks he does protest too much. It looks like a heck of a good car to me. And I'm nearly a second clear the rest of the field here this afternoon, Steve.
I know, I mean, the F2002 is now just starting to become into its own as well, because they're now developing the car. They've got some new aerodynamic tweaks coming on it. So, you know, the rest have really got to pick their pace up.
The good get great. When we come back, we'll have another report coming up from Peter Windsor. Every race, you know, we see the team managers camped out at their trackside control centers. Over the years, we've seen them get more and more complicated, more and more monitors and computers. So just what can they watch? How sophisticated are these mobile communication pit centers? We'll find out in just a moment. Welcome back to the Acura pre-race show for the Spanish Grand Prix. A little aerial view of the pit lane as the cars finish their reconnaissance laps, come in to get formed up on the grid. Time to talk about all those monitor walls that are located right on the edge of pit lane. Just what do those guys watch during the race? Of course, you know, are they watching cartoons? We know they're watching Speed Channel sometimes. Well, Peter Windsor found out from a guy named Nigel Stepney from Ferrari. That, by the way, is Steve Matchett's old boss.
If you could just talk us through this incredibly impressive edifice. It's basically monitors on wheels, really, isn't it?
I mean, there are 10 channels, basically all the monitors we have. Each person can watch each 10 channels of the from onboard cameras, whatever you want, with the times and everything. That's all the monitors are for, just so you don't have to keep changing channels.
Because presumably for engineers it's quite difficult to work out how to change channels, and you just want to make life easy for them.
No, it's amazing what you pick up on replays, because normally you don't look at replays, but with having all the monitors all set up, you see a lot more things going through the race or in practice that you'd miss normally.
Yeah. And then on the desk level here, if we come up, Damien, our cameraman, we can just have a look down here.
It's not actually switched on, but I mean, each group of engineers has his computer. This computer is attached to our main telemetry, which is in the box. From this, basically, you have any data that you want, from strategies that we've talked about before, from every lap of real time on fuel consumption, temperatures, you name it, we can see the data here the same as what we've got in the box.
Does it make the car go faster?
Doesn't make the car go faster, but it allows you to operate to the maximum. We try and operate in a way that we look at every aspect to make it easy, even though basic racing is hard, but that we can react and see and communicate very easily, because if you can't communicate during the race, and it's quite difficult, you've got 100 people. I mean, you've got the pit stop crew, you've got telemetry, there's a lot of information running around, and you've got problems going on during the race, and you're trying to come up with the solutions to fix the problems during the race.
Well, that's a pretty impressive setup, isn't it? Now, there's a lot more monitors there than there was 5 years ago, and I think Nigel Stepney looks like a little cuddly bear there, to what I remember him, I tell you.
Nigel Stepney and you must come from the same area. Sounds exactly the same as you.
Well, he's a Norfolk boy. He's a Norfolk boy from where Lotus is, but yeah, there's probably about 100 miles between us.
Rubens Barrichello out checking out the track before he comes up for the grid. Juan Montoya taking one last stop at the little booth behind the garage, as the case may be. Imagine what it costs to go Formula One racing when you think about just what it costs to make one of those pit communication center. Time to take another break. One of the most sophisticated pieces of equipment on a Formula One car is the steering wheel. It's almost like you need a degree from MIT just to figure out how to work all those buttons. So we're going to take you on a button-by-button tour of a Formula One steering wheel in just a moment. Welcome back to the Acura Pre-Race Show. You see Eddie Irvine, the man has been moved to the back of the grid because of the fuel problem. You've no doubt seen the Formula One steering wheel that Eddie and the rest of these guys are going to be using with all its button and dials. Well, Peter Windsor, with a little help from Williams test driver Mark Genet, cracks the code to show us just exactly what all those buttons do.
Well, let's have a look at all these buttons here. What do they all mean?
Yeah, probably the most important ones, as you can see, is the bigger one is cut. That's when we turn off the engine, because it's kind of an ignition cut thing. And then radio. So this would be the ones we use even with a thumb. And also this is a very important pit limit. If you miss this button...
The pit speed limiter, yeah.
If you miss this button, not only you are fine, but you've probably lost the race, because 30-second pit stop, it's totally out of question.
But what happens if you hit that and you're in fourth gear?
It doesn't work. It only works on the first and second gear. Fourth gear, it would do nothing. Simple as that.
Okay.
Then you'd have these two buttons. This is for start. Auto arm is to arm the start, launch start, and then you press another button and the car starts on its own. So it's also important to be very quick on reaction time. Well, this one also we shouldn't forget is very important. It tells us the brake balance we are in. It's useful because if it's changing, track is changing, you lock the front, you first check what brake balance you're using, 50 or 60%, and then with something we have on the cockpit, we adjust. And these are probably the ones we use more. This is more for engine management. This is for driving. Driving is the diff. With the diff, you can have more or less understeer or oversteer, and you can adjust that during the race. And this is something that would only be done if the engineers tell us to. Fuel is to change the fuel consumption, just in case suddenly you're not making it for the pit stop. You change the fuel consumption, the car consumes less, but it runs less too. And the TC is just to change different slip targets.
Thanks very much, Mark.
You're welcome.
Well, that's a pretty complex thing. We have to remember all that electronics is fed down through the steering column into the car's computers. Now, talking about launch control there, let's have a look at Montoya in last year's USGP, and we'll see the launch control system on the car. Watch his left hand for a start as he checks it down into neutral. Now the right thumb arms the system, watches the revs pick up. Now watch the right thumb again. That'll just release the button and away the car will go. The perfect computer-controlled start, huh? No wheel spin, doesn't look spectacular, David, like you were saying yesterday, but it's the quickest way off the line.
They don't look spectacular at all, but look how he caught up with the front row there from way back, so it was a great start. And the BMW launch control seems to work particularly well, there's no doubt about it. We saw King Juan Carlos on the grid there. I think he was probably having a quick lesson from Juan Pablo on the how he uses the steering wheel.
The launch control, so he can figure out the buttons. And they were saying that each driver's steering wheel is a little bit different. They all have their own preferences. They can get colors, that type of thing. Yeah. So each one could be just a little bit different. This is the track at Spain, Catalonia. When we return in just a moment, we will take a lap around the Circuit de Catalonia with David Hobbs, Jenson Button, and Kimi Räikkönen. Don't go away. Speed Channel coverage of Formula One will continue. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix as we take a close-up look at the steering wheel we were just talking about a moment ago, only about 12 minutes away from the start of this race. Let's take a look at the Mercedes track map with Steve Mack.
Yes, well, it's 3 miles round, 65 laps we'll be doing. There's a lot of corners on this, about 13, but look, it's a long, long straight. That's one of the highlights of this track. 190 mile an hour, they'll be in 6th gear, about 2,500 kilos of downforce. Further round the Renault corner, high understeer inducing corner there. A lot of tyre scrub, very, very high tyre wear on this circuit. And further round still, round at La Cascia, there will be a few undulations on the circuit there. That's going to unsettle the chassis. And now, Mr. Hobbs, why don't you give us a tour around this track on the onboard shots?
Well, I shall try and talk you around, but Mr. Button is actually going to give us a tour. Jenson Button and his Renault on that front straightaway. About 195 as they come into turn 1. This is really the only overtaking spot on the circuit. And as you can see, they brake unbelievably late into the 2nd gear corner. Then this little left-hand sweep out of it. And then into Renault, this long, long right-hander. Really tough on that left front tyre, this one. Very, very tough. And they exit this corner at around about 135 miles an hour. Very slightly downhill into this 3rd gear right-hander. Road falling away. Got no help from the camber at all. As you come on down here to the one of the slowest corners here, this is Seat, 2nd gear. Again, tight left-hander, road falling away badly there, so a lot more understeer. Quick flick down to this next tight left-hander. We're on board with Kimi Räikkönen now. Now we start to go up it a little bit. A good blast up through the gears here to Kamsa, a 4th gear right-hander, about 125, 130 mile an hour. Get the wheel over the edge there. And a very fast run down to La Cascia, 180 mile an hour as we go on the brakes here. Very bumpy on the approach. You can see how the tyre marks are sort of serrated on the road there where they've been locking up on the way into that corner. Uphill again now. This is Bank Sabadell, a right-hander, about 70 or 80 miles an hour. Then the 2 real daunting ones, New Holland, 135 mile an hour. And the final corner again, about 135, 140 miles an hour. And you really want to get that corner right to launch yourself down this straight so you can stay with whoever you're dicing with, because at the end of this straight, it's the only place you're going to be able to get around them. So it's a complex circuit. Not a great overtaker.
The fans are having a fun time out here in Spain. I'm not quite sure if that lady's a part of this whole process, but 2 weeks ago it was the San Marino Grand Prix, a great race for Ferrari and Ferrari fanatics, but the rest of the teams and their fans, well, probably not the most exciting race ever. But Peter talked to the 3 drivers who were on the podium and says it's worth reviewing the race. The race started with the 2 Ferrari F2002s of Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello in the front row. Michael got away cleanly, but Barrichello on the dirty line was passed by Ralf Schumacher on the run up into Tamburello. Michael checked out. Barrichello pressured Ralf for second and made it a point to let Eddie Irvine know just exactly what he thought of him when the Jaguar held up the Ferrari. Barrichello stayed with Ralf until their first stops. He then stayed out when Ralf came in and passed him at the end of his own stop.
Couldn't really get close enough. I mean, Formula One today is really difficult to overtake, and I couldn't really get close to Ralf. And I had.
How much was he slowing you down in terms of lap time, do you think?
I think quite a bit.
From there, the only question was how many times would Michael stop? Michael pitted at just about the halfway point, and it looked like he may have been on a one-stop strategy.
Yeah, I mean, we did half a distance, so we could have gone to a one-stop, and they couldn't have gone that much longer, so we knew we had obviously something in the pocket.
Schumacher did stop a second time, but so did everyone else. It was easy. Michael had it in the bag. The pass of the day, though, came late in the race. In a battle for 8th spot, Felipe Massa passing Jarno Trulli. Now, Ferrari was the class of the field in this race, a 1-2 finish. Williams, BMW, and Ralf Schumacher finished third, but it looks like they have a lot of work to do.
In general, it seems that we are slightly too slow compared to the Ferraris, and we have to go back home and think about it.
We had a good start, we had a good strategy, we had a perfect car, reliable, fast, with fantastic tires. So all in all, combination was just right to win.
Cars are on the grid. Just a moment ago, we got a good look at some of the little pre-race goings-on they do with the cars, Steve.
Yeah, an excellent shot just coming off the world feed there, where we saw the Ferrari. The back end of the Ferrari had some heat stickers all over the carbon suspension. You just see as this shot pans round there. And they're very, very worried about the heat of the exhaust. There's periscope exhaust going down onto the carbon suspension wishbones there. You see all those little orange stickers? But each one of those will blow off at a different temperature. So after the race, the engineers can study it and see exactly how hot that carbon suspension's got.
When we come back to Speed Channel's live coverage of the Spanish Grand Prix, we'll have a lot more. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Speed Channel's live coverage of the Spanish Grand Prix. I'm Rick DeBrule alongside David Hobbs and Steve Matchett. And now it is time to see how they line up today for the BMW starting grid. On the pole for the 46th time in his career, Michael Schumacher blowing away the old record by nearly 2 seconds. Beside him, his teammate Rubens, who almost had the pole yesterday.
In third spot in the first of the Williams BMWs, but nearly a second slow is Ralf Schumacher, and alongside him his teammate Montoya, who actually only did that on the last gasp lap.
Row number 3 is Kimi the Kid Räikkönen, qualifying ahead of David Coulthard again. Beside him, Jenson Button, who's 4th in the championship and hungry for a podium.
On row 4, no doubt, a bitterly disappointed David Coulthard, who said this could be a lonely afternoon, and alongside Nick Heidfeld, who might well end up in the points.
Row 5 is Jarno Trulli, who still hasn't scored a point this year. Beside him, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who was second fastest on Friday.
In 11th spot, Felipe Massa has run very well all weekend. 4th this morning in the warm-up, and alongside him in a disappointing 12th spot, Fisichella in his Jordan, first of the Honda-powered cars.
Row 7, the first of the BARs, be Olivier Panis. Beside him, Enrique Bernoldi.
On row 8, a lot of money with not much to show for it. Jacques Villeneuve in his BAR Honda, and Pedro de la Rosa in the first of the Jaguars.
Row 9, the law firm of Salo and Sato, the Toyota and the Jordan.
In 19th spot, Alan McNish in his Toyota, not having a very good weekend, and nor is Eddie Irvine, who's alongside him, got relegated to the back row after a fuel infraction.
And row number 11 doesn't exist at this race. Mark Webber, Alex Young, the entire Minardi team has been withdrawn because of wing failures. They had a wing fail in testing. They had a wing fail, 2 wings fail yesterday, 2 front wings. This morning they had another one fail. As a result, the team has been withdrawn for safety concerns. So there will be no Minardis driving at this particular race. We're going to take one last break before the start of the Spanish Grand Prix. When we come back, it'll be time for the cars to roll off. Welcome back to Speed Channel coverage of the Spanish Grand Prix, and we're just less than 30 seconds away from the cars rolling off. Talk about the weather. Not a bad day, but not good enough for the Michelins potentially. Track temperature of 70 degrees, humidity about 88%, not much breeze, and just a slight hazy cloudiness over the sky right now. And there's some concern that the Michelin tires just don't have enough heat and warmth, David, to do well today.
No, and I think that wind there at 12 miles an hour, I think that was a misprint. I think it's 1.2. It's very, very, very light breeze today. This place is subject to a lot of wind that comes off the Mediterranean Sea, which is, Barrichello stalled on the grid. Oh, my. Boy, oh, boy.
Well, Barrichello will have to go to the back of the grid.
This is going to make for a very interesting race.
Boy.
Remember, he was almost the fastest in qualifying yesterday. He was fastest in the warm-up this morning. He definitely knows how to go fast at this track. And they're going to try and figure out how to start this car.
Well, the mechanics are trying to get to the car to get the thing started, but these guys, the marshals, I don't know who the guy was that didn't seem to be dressed as a marshal, was trying to get the car off the grid. The mechanics are allowed to get that car started, and Barrichello can rejoin at the back of the grid, so consternation there.
Well, we're waiting to find out what's going to happen. Let's real quickly talk about the BMW storylines, David.
Well, I was going to say that Barrichello was under pressure anyway, because he's only scored points in one race, which was 2 weeks ago. And was he going to be leading this race and asked to relinquish the lead to Michael Schumacher? Well, I don't think that's going to happen now. But he could still win this race the way these Ferraris are going, even if he starts from the back and Michael was to have a DNF.
Well, tyre advantage. We're just seeing Barrichello's car being pushed off the grid and into the pit lane. Tyre advantage, really, this race, it looks like it's going to be Bridgestone. There's a lot of cars on Michelin's, of course, are going to do well, but Bridgestone on Ferrari, they're the guys up front.
And finally, we'll talk about the other storyline, which is Jenson Button. The guy has a streak. He is 4th in the championship right now, scoring points right and left. The Renault is doing great. I guess the question is, can his streak continue, or is luck finally going to catch up to him? And poor Rubens, you sit here and look.
He just has the worst luck, doesn't he? I mean, good Lord alive. They gave him the old car in Brazil because they thought it was going to be the safe, reliable one, and the thing pooped out on him, and just
I have a feeling Michael is really going slow now coming onto the grid. I think he's trying to buy Barrichello's mechanics more time to try and get the thing fired up, get the computers reset, so that he won't lose an awful lot of time after the race starts. So a bit of a shrewd move by Ferrari going
Michael, keep the speed down, Michael, keep the speed down.
And you realize what this is going to do for Juan Pablo Montoya. This is going to give Montoya a straight shot beside Michael Schumacher. There's Ross Brawn trying to figure out what's wrong.
Talk about the best laid plans. Could you believe that? But these BMWs do have formidable launch controls. They have tremendous horsepower, and they could well get to turn 1 first. And then Michael Schumacher's really going to have his work cut out to get around them.
Well, they're still having trouble down there. I mean, Barrichello's desperately trying to get the launch control set, but things are not going well down there.
I tell you, Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher, this sort of thing never happens to Michael Schumacher.
All right, let's get ready for the start of this race. Final cars forming up on the grid. There you see Michael Schumacher all by himself in the front row. And the question is, Rubens Barrichello going to be able to join? Are they going to get the car going? Lights are on. Time to start the Spanish Grand Prix.
Jenson Button making a great start there on the inside. No, you're not coming down there, sunshine, says Michael Schumacher. They all seem to get through turn 1. Look at the way he's picking up speed coming through turn 2. But the 2 Williams BMWs right behind him. And I think that's is that Jenson Button has jumped into 3rd? Or is it still Raikkonen? Can't tell from this shot. No, it's still Raikkonen.
They're Ferrari mechanics putting a new steering wheel onto Barrichello's car now. Remember what we've just been talking about? All the electronics on those buttons being fed down through the steering column. That's a signal, of course, to get the thing fired up. But looks like problems with the gear selector or the launch control buttons on that steering wheel. Can you believe it?
The frustrations for Rubens Barrichello.
Oh, smoke coming at the back of the picture there. Was that locking up, or was that someone sliding up the road?
The way it's set up right now, Michael Schumacher had an easy lead. No concern at all about Montoya slotting up. Ralf Schumacher in the 2nd Williams, then Montoya. Then it looks like Kimi Räikkönen in 4th, Jenson Button
right behind him.
And David Coulthard had said, it wouldn't have mattered if I'd qualified in front of Jenson Button, because their launch control on the Renault is so good, he would have gone past me anyway.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to note that the guy that's designing the Benetton launch control was the guy that used to design the Ferrari launch control. So Ferrari having problems and Renault taking advantage of it.
And we still have not seen Rubens Barrichello leave the pit lane, so it looks like he may stay back and push his car into the garage. Oh, what frustrations for him this year. What a horrible year it's been. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher has all the luck. In fact, this morning in the warm-up, his car stalled on the track. It stopped on the track. once again, Michael Schumacher, who just managed to escape all the gremlins. And you were talking, David, about the fact that sooner or later the law of averages has to catch up with this guy.
Absolutely.
Taking a look at the start.
He made a pretty good start there and managed to hold off the BMW engine cars. Jenson Button made a great start. And I thought he was going to get there. You see him right behind Kimi Raikkonen. But Raikkonen weaving around to keep him back.
Yeah, Raikkonen was around the outside of
Button had got inside him going into turn 1. He just went around the outside of him again. So
Ralph had a little sniff, see if he could get into that first corner first, but of course Big Brother Michael was having none of that.
No.
Michael Schumacher trying to run away with it as soon as he can here at the start of the Spanish Grand Prix, already 2 seconds ahead. Then it's Montoya, Raikkonen, Jenson Button.
2 laps, 2.2 seconds. So at that rate, he would, in fact, lap the field.
And there is Barrichello out of the car. And
oh, my God. Can you believe it? Poor guy. Just...
the guy, the team, everyone. Those guys would have been up probably all night from when we went off the air at the end of the qualifying show yesterday until we came on air just now. Those guys would probably have been preparing that car for the race. Didn't even take the start.
And yet it went out on the reconnaissance laps, and it was capable of going around the track then, and for whatever reason, it just stopped on the grid and wouldn't restart. Well, Michael Schumacher, who says he's going to drive for Ferrari for life, right now is the only Ferrari in this race.
He's pretty much the only car in shot as well at the moment.
Whoops. Pedro de la Rosa got himself dug in the sand trap. Oh dear, the only Spaniard in the race. Out in front of his home crowd in ignominious fashion.
And we've been talking about these sand traps, and you were saying you're surprised that they're still there as much as they are.
We've seen some instances, some gravel traps this weekend, and there's no doubt about it that Brazil, where they had moved them all, he just spun on his own by the look of things. Got it.
Yeah.
The consistency of that trap looks pretty sort of muddy, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
And I think when he spun, he was actually in last place. I think, in fact, he was behind his teammate, Eddie Irvine. He was back in 19th spot.
So not a good day for Spanish drivers. That's a rear wing.
Like a McLaren rear wing.
It is a McLaren wing, isn't it? You're dead right.
Well, we think it's Raikkonen. It certainly looked like McLaren wing, as you agreed, David. I think it's probably Raikkonen's car's gone off, and well, we didn't see where the car is.
We got a great view from Spanish TV of Michael Schumacher, who's leading the race, but the question is, what happened to Kimi Raikkonen, and where is Kimi Raikkonen? And there we've got Mika Salo already coming into the pits for some problem.
Well, that's certainly way too early for a scheduled stop, of course. So either I would guess, probably picked up a puncture on some of those carbon shards that have come off from that wing failure or whatever happened there. But we need to see a replay of that to get a full picture.
Salo had been back in 16th.
It was on the main straight. Maybe we'll see now when we get a look at the straight if we can see Raikkonen's car parked at the side of the road anywhere. Don't see it.
Well, the McLaren mechanics are out in the pit, so we can assume that the car is still running, but we need to see a shot of that. Great to see Ferrari, of course, the race leader, but let's have a look what's going on with McLaren.
I think we heard the pit lane horn just a moment ago. As Ferrari continues to go around the track, Kimi Raikkonen is coming into the pits. What a scary moment as you're cruising along, getting ready to go into a turn and having your wing flap. And that's what happened to Mark Webber this morning.
There it is. Well, that's
look
going to
at
go back in the car. Then it's got to put that into the garage, because changing the rear wing is a lot more complex procedure than changing the front, because it's all on that rear crash structure bolted onto the back of the transmission. They can probably get that wing changed in about a minute. But the thing is,
here we go.
We're going to pick this up.
Whoa!
Oh boy!
Jenson Button just missed it there.
Well, this long straight going down Barcelona has caused all sorts of wing failures throughout the last few years as well. I mean, we've seen Webber's wing fail this morning, which of course put Minardi out. Ferrari have had a wing failure here. Benetton have had a wing failure here as well. Ferrari have had it in testing. Benetton have had it in the race. So much loading going down that long straight. 2,500, 3,000 kilos of downforce. The car itself is only weighing in at 600 kilos, so you can see massive loads going onto the rear wing.
Huge loads go to the rear wing, but the thing that usually breaks rear wings is those bumpy tracks that sort of fracture the posts. And this is not really a bumpy track. A few bumps, but nothing really much. But a very long straight, as you say, developing 4,000 kilos, which is what? No, 2,000 kilos, right?
2,000, 2,500, so it's about 5,000
nearly
pounds.
5,000 pounds, yeah.
Kimi Räikkönen has gotten out of his car, so his day has come to an end. The McLaren losing the wing. There you see it sitting in the garage. A lot of developments at the very start of this race. Stick around. You never know what's going to happen here at the Spanish Grand Prix.
Speed Channel's coverage of Formula One is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, located on the web at mbusa.com.
Rick Rule along with Steve Matchett and David Hobbs here at the Spanish Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher running away with it. 7 laps in, he's got over a 6-second lead, and before long he's going to be catching Eddie Irvine, who's the guy at the back of the grid. We should mention a moment ago while we were away, another car dropped out. Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan came into the pits and got out of the car.
Well, this is a tough time now for Ron Dennis and the McLaren engineers, because they've got to think very seriously of what caused that wing failure on Raikkonen's car and make the call from the pit lane. Do we bring Coulthard in and retire the car? And we have to remember that all these cars are built to the same specification as far as wing layout and strength in those rear wing mounting points onto the pylons, onto the crash structure is concerned. I don't know, do you leave that car out there, and what happens if you have a wing failure? Do you call him in and retire it? Remember, both Minardis are retired because of wing failures, and when Sauber had wing failure, I think in the Brazilian race last year before, both cars retired. That's the way it works. So tough call for Ron Dennis right now.
Takuma Sato is benefiting from some of these retirements. He's also moving up through the field. He is now in 14th spot, having started in 18th, but he has passed Salo, obviously De La Rosa's out. He's also passed Villeneuve.
Just on board with Montoya.
Look how late they break. For dear life there, David. Boy, Montoya, who of course is the guy that everybody chose to be Michael Schumacher's main challenger this year. Look at that, 10 seconds behind, nearly 11 seconds behind at the end of lap 9. So this is not going to be the race where he's going to challenge him. There's Jenson Button just in front of David Coulthard. Jenson Button having a great day, and a lot of rivalry but now between Jenson Button and David Coulthard. The British press whipping themselves into a frenzy as to who's going to be the top Brit. Doesn't mean much to the Americans, but it obviously means a lot to the British. And Jenson Button at the moment is leading David Coulthard in the championship points-wise, and he's also leading him in the race today. David Coulthard dismissed it all a couple of weeks ago as, well, he did well at Imola, but it takes more than one race to make a summer. Well, this looks like a number 2 race coming up here to me.
A word from the Ferrari pit wall. Official reason for Barrichello's retirement is gear selection trouble.
Probably hydraulic. Is that hydraulic?
Could be hydraulics, although I didn't see any fluid coming out of the car to indicate a pipe had burst or a line had come off or that sort of thing. Changing the steering wheel, of course, is sort of a standard thing to do. You know, it's one of those, it would be a standard practice. It may be the wheel, therefore change it. But, you know, it can be such a myriad of problems that could cause gear selection problems on these cars.
David Coulthard, the meat in a Renault sandwich. Jenson Button in front of him. Jarno Trulli just behind him. Jarno Trulli has benefited enormously from those retirements at the sharp end of this field. Nick Heidfeld just behind him, and his teammate Massa behind him. I thought they actually might be able to handle the McLarens and the Renaults with their Bridgestone tyres, but maybe it's just a little bit too much for them to be up against such major factory teams as McLaren and Renault.
It'll be interesting to see what happens as the race goes on with those Bridgestone tires that the Saubers are running. Michael Schumacher just walking away at this moment in time early on, but as he said, anything can happen in a race like this. And as we've seen with other cars, anything can happen as well. You were mentioning hydraulic failure. It was hydraulic failure that caused Michael's car to stop during the morning warm-up. I don't know if there's a connection between that and what happened with Rubin's car, but it was hydraulic failure this morning that caused his car to stop on the course.
Well, Montoya's car is like a second and a half off the pace of what Michael's setting in the Ferrari, and we're seeing on that great onboard shot the amount of understeer that was being induced to the car going around Kampse, for example. You see how the car was just trying to wash away, and Michelin, all the tyres actually Bridgestone as well, but Michelin in particular using a very hard compound and two different constructions, one for McLaren and one for Williams, to try and help the car handle better. But the compound has been the same, but it's basically so hard, of course. The cars are just washing off the circuit. There's just not enough front-end downforce on the car.
Well, and of course the other thing, they thought it would be warmer here than it is. You know, we've got an ambient temperature of around about 65, 68. Obviously, if the sun, as you can see, is not. Whoa! There's that gravel trap. That's the very fast turn onto the straight.
Takuma Sato is off course in the gravel, and once you're in the gravel and you've high-centered, you're not going anywhere.
That's both Jordan Honda's out now. The Jordan team in big financial problem. They laid off or fired 52 people. Oh, he just gets it over the curb and gets it into that. See, that gravel trap to me is way too close to the road, and it's so unstable when you get the car in there.
Ooh, what a ride. He tried to get that, didn't he?
He wanted to have an accident. He wasn't quite sure where to have it.
But I tell you what, Takuma Sato's had a lot of accidents this year, so the team might have to be reevaluating that as well. I mean, he's a very young driver, come straight out of Formula 3 last year, British Formula 3, where he absolutely cleaned up big time, and people had high hopes, but he's making a lot of mistakes.
You know, a lot of talk about whether or not Honda's going to even be back with Jordan next year. Jordan says they've got a contract for those Honda engines, but boy, if you don't have the results, there's some serious questions about whether they're going to be around. And lately, Jordan definitely does not have the results. Michael Schumacher continues to lead here at the Spanish Grand Prix, being chased by Ralf Schumacher. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Speed Channel coverage of the Spanish Grand Prix, round 5 of the Formula One World Championship. Ralf Schumacher in the Williams is chasing his brother Michael Schumacher, and that is the only Ferrari out there because Rubens Barrichello never got off the starting grid. Apparently there was a gear selection problem. As a result, he was out before the race ever began.
Boy, Michael Schumacher just picked up over another second on that lap. It looked like Ralf Schumacher was going to give him some pressure because the gap slowed up. But look at that, Michael Schumacher, a 22.1 for the fastest lap. Last year's fastest lap was a 21.1, so he's got a bit to go for that. But still got quite a bit of fuel on board, I suppose.
Yeah, we should get into the fuel stop strategy scenarios. I mean, it's all second guessing as it always is, and whether it's the announcers in the booth here or the technical directors down on the pit wall, you know, it's all second guessing each other. Traditionally, this race has been a two-stop race. Now, if we look back last year, Michael Schumacher and Hakkinen came in about between lap 23 for Michael and Hakkinen on lap 27, so that's your pit stop window for the first stop of a two-stop race. It is possible that Williams might be trying a one-stop race, and maybe that's a deficit to Ferrari and Michael at the moment, although the times in qualifying and practice really indicate that that's not the case. They're just struggling really with tyres and general setup, and you know, we've touched on it before, but the Bridgestone Ferrari situation means that they are so hand in hand together with that exchange of technical information feedback that really it looks like Bridgestone have got the advantage over Michelin tyres, and Ferrari have got the advantage over the rest of the field.
Well, there was talk this week in the fact that Michelin brought 2 tire compounds, but really they brought 1 tire compound for the Williams and 1 tire compound for McLaren, unlike Bridgestone, which brought 2 tire compounds for Ferrari to choose from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the problem, really, that Michelin have now got. What they've done in a way, Rick, what they've done is brought one compound and two different constructions. They've brought a harder construction to the rear tyres to help the McLaren's handling, because they were so bad at Imola, which has helped McLaren to an extent. But of course, you know,
may not have helped Williams.
Absolutely.
And of course, the other team they're going to start seriously thinking about helping now is Renault, because really the competition seems to be more between Renault and McLaren, certainly between those two more than it is, say, McLaren and Ferrari, which is what everybody thought. And probably even better battle between these two teams, Renault and McLaren, than it is between Ferrari and Williams at the moment, because although the Williams are running second, they're running a long way behind in second, and these two teams, Renault and McLaren, really duking it out for the third best team out there. And David Coulthard said it was going to be a lonely afternoon, but really not quite lonely enough, because he is really the McLaren meat in a Renault sandwich. He's having his work cut out to hold Jarno Trulli off, and he's certainly having his work cut out to catch Jenson Button up.
Yeah.
And there you see the three of them. I think Jarno Trulli is slightly catching him up, and right behind Jarno Trulli is Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber.
On Bridgestone.
On Bridgestone.
You know, you see a lot of email on the message boards and whatever going around the internet sites, people asking why are Bridgestone concentrating only on one team and Michelin are working on two? What is the advantage for the sport? And that, well, boys, the thing is that the cold light of day, it's all about selling tyres, and Bridgestone want to get one team onto the top step of the podium. That's where the photographs come from. That's where the advertising is gained, and that's why the guys sell tyres. So really, it's all about commercial reasons. That's why everybody's involved in F1 at the end of the day.
Much better to have the guy at the top position than 2 and 3 as we ride on board with Juan Montoya.
To where Sato started his accident. Right here is where he started it, and it didn't end up till he got in the sand trap right on the left there. So as you said, it was a long accident which took him a long time to find where he really needed to be.
If it had been asphalt there, would he have still had the accident?
I think if it had been asphalt, it wouldn't have happened, no, because he wouldn't have got so out of shape in the first place.
Amazing to think, just 10 years ago, was that car slowing?
I think it's just slow in comparison.
In comparison to Michael, everybody's slow out there. You know, just amazing to think that 10 years ago, Ferrari was out to lunch. You remember 1992? They had, with Ivan Capelli and Jean Alesi, they had 2 podiums, no wins. They just, weren't doing that great. And now it is total and complete domination. And the reality is you have to lay it all at the feet of this guy right here.
Absolutely. I mean, he went to Ferrari in 1996, was it?
Yeah.
And everybody said, what a dumb move, me more than anybody, because I couldn't see why he wouldn't go to McLaren, and by which time, by now, he'd already have 5 world championships. But he got huge money there, and he certainly wanted the challenge, relished the challenge. And he really, by the scruff of the neck, just dragged that team around, got the right people with him. He's got great management. And, of course, he's got Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne, Jean Todt to be the overall sort of Führer. And, I mean, they have just knocked this team into shape. Something wicked. And it's mainly due to old Michael Schumacher's personal influence, I think. You work with him, Steve. I mean, you know exactly what sort of a guy he is.
Yeah, well, they've made an excellent. How Ferrari have been turned around is quite incredible. And Rick, as you say, the 92 car really at Ferrari was an absolute dog. They were trying to create active suspension to go on the thing, and the thing was a trade-off between passive suspension and active, and Ferrari in all sorts of problems. There's about 10,000 managers and 3 mechanics, and it's a situation with Chiefs and Indians, and no one really sure which direction was going. Lira being thrown at the project. Driver feedback probably not at its optimum with those 2 guys in the cars, and they were struggling. There's no doubt about that.
Here he comes to lap.
Mika Salo
in the Toyota. And of course he did the same with Benetton, really. I mean, Benetton were a very average team till he went there. Wins 2 world championships, 94 and 95, and since he's left, I mean, what have they done? until this year, Benetton's been in the total doldrums.
Absolutely.
And even now, compared to Ferrari, we're looking at them being, 20-odd seconds behind at this stage of the race.
The sad situation at Benetton was that really the team began to think that they were winning the World Championships, and that is fatal, really, for the future of the team.
Absolutely fatal, yeah.
Mika Sala moves over, let Michael Schumacher, the train, move on by. It's going to be hard for anybody to avoid that from happening today. Don't go away. The Spanish Grand Prix will return. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix. You haven't missed very much. This little battle going on the track right here. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, you saw for just a brief moment as he was trying to hold off Olivier Panis. Frentzen, who was for 9th position. Frentzen was second fastest in the morning, or in the Friday practice out here, which kind of blew everybody away. Obviously light tanks, good tires, but still to be second fastest for that team was pretty impressive.
Well, to be holding off the power of the might of BAR and Honda. I mean, for the Arrows team, which is a very relatively small team, they have the same Cosworth engine that Jaguar have got, and it's a magnificent effort for Heinz-Harald there, locking up as he goes down the hill. Both these teams, obviously the Arrows and the BAR, are on Bridgestone tyres. Michael Schumacher, just about every lap he's setting now as the car gets light on fuel, is quicker than the lap before, and he's now within like 5.5 tenths of his own personal lap record set last year. And if he sets the fastest lap this race, that will be the 150th fastest lap, I think, for Ferrari.
Yeah, it'll be his 45th. He leads Prost, who only has 41, and way back there is Ayrton Senna, who only had 19.
Yeah, if he sets the fastest lap, it'll be the 150th, and Williams are next on 121.
Well, amazingly, Michael Schumacher has not had a fastest lap this year. Juan Montoya had 2 in Malaysia and Brazil. Kimi Räikkönen had 1 in Australia. Rubens Barrichello had the fastest lap at Imola. So far, if he does it this race...
I don't see anybody else doing it quite at the moment, but you never know. It's interesting, too. Ayrton Senna, was just the world's finest pole setter. Obviously, 65 poles. Incredible pole setter. And he had very few fastest laps.
Yeah, only 19.
Very odd, yeah. I could never quite understand that.
Well, we must be getting into that pit stop window now. Renault making preparations for a pit stop. The two Williams guys are closing in on each other as well, so they're an interesting battle a little bit further back, but at the moment it's still a pretty dominating performance by Team Ferrari up front. Now, talking about the importance of the designers in the F2002, here's a little trivia question we were looking at earlier on. How far do you have to go back before a championship was won without it being designed, the car being designed by either Rory Byrne or Adrian Newey? I mean, two of the biggest names in the sport. But how far do you have to go back before a championship was won by another designer?
I know the answer because we were talking about it, but it's a long time.
Well, I've got the answer down here. It's Neil Oatley that designed the McLaren in 1991. So from 1991 to today, 11 years, 11 Constructors' Championships by cars that have been designed by Byrne or Newey.
Of course, Adrian Newey, who's now with McLaren, was designed the Williams that year, which was also a very good car. And Adrian Newey has had some good cars, of course, going right back to his IndyCar days with teams like Bobby Rahal.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys, a very traditional racer. We're talking about this, you know, they're both, Byrne and Newey, are real racers. I was watching the Renault guys get in with a pit stop.
It's Jarno Trulli who's brought the very first Renault in. Fairly quick stop, 8.4 seconds. Looks like he's on a two-stop strategy. Alan McNish, the Toyota, is also in.
Yeah, and in these days of high technology and all the computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacture, Adrian Newey still uses a drawing board and nothing else, as we're watching the BAR mechanics work on filming those cars out in there. But yeah, and Toyota as well. So we're in pit stop window now. We're seeing another car go down the pit lane.
It's going to be interesting to see just how much longer the Williams stay out than the Ferrari. Another fastest lap for Michael Schumacher, 21.3, so he's now within 2 tenths of his fastest lap last year. Oh, well, that solves that problem. Ralf Schumacher is now in, so obviously they are not going to go any longer than the Ferrari. So Montoya now is second. There you see the fastest lap for Michael Schumacher.
We were hoping for a little pit stop strategy to kind of mess things up, but obviously, at least in the case of Ralf Schumacher, it's not going to happen unless they've decided to go differently with his teammate. It's a two-stop strategy. And
Ralf
Jenson Button,
Schumacher pulling out only just in front of Jenson Button. Interesting to see if Jenson Button can pick up any time on the BMW Williams, but probably not.
You got to remember, they're both on Michelin's.
Oh,
Jenson Button apparently was coming in.
He was coming in,
Just coming in, yeah.
8 seconds dead for Buttons at pit stop. There it is. There's the confirmation at the bottom of the screen, yeah.
I should point out that the Williams have finished every Spanish Grand Prix since 1979 in the points.
Well, one doesn't like to be any sort of a Jonah, but Michael Schumacher has finished every single Spanish Grand Prix that he's been in since 1991, and he's won it 3 times. He's come second twice. He's come third 3 times. His worst finish was his very first race here when he was 6, so he scored a point in his very first Spanish Grand Prix back in 1991, and ever since then he's been well and truly in the points.
All right, now it's going to be a battle for second. Montoya's coming into the pit, so the question is, how fast are they going to get Montoya in and out? Will he be able to get out ahead of his teammate Ralf Schumacher? He had about a 2-second lead. There you see Mika Salo. Ralf Schumacher had about a 2-second lead over Montoya. Ralf was 8.2, Montoya up to 10.4.
Well, they had problems with the right front. We might be able to get a little replay of that. With the right front problem was that's what they were doing. Normally, it's the fuel which takes the longest time. Now, it's not the tyre guys have got the pressure is off them. It's all down to the fuel, but right front was the problem.
And he comes out alone, so you got to think that Ralf Schumacher, his teammate in the other Williams, has already gone by. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher still out on the track. He's not going to prove us all. There he goes.
Yeah, I was going to say, perhaps the rubber didn't they decide they're on a one-stop strategy.
We got to remember, at Imola, they were on a one-stop strategy, and then they changed in mid-race to a two-stop strategy. That wasn't the original plan, but they figured, it's such a good lead, why not?
Oh! Yeah.
Trouble getting the fuel hose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that situation, of course, was at Spanish Grand Prix a couple of years ago, where the guy that was holding the lollipop, holding the car, lifted up when Stepney, if you remember, was holding the fuel hose, and the car took off and went straight over his ankle, broke his ankle.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to be so calm during those pit stops. I mean, it's such a high, stressful period for the team. But certainly the guy holding the lollipop really has to have nerves of steel and watch everything that's going off. Of course, not only that, he's also got to watch the pit lane as well before he can release the car. Otherwise, the driver would just pull out straight into the traffic that's coming down the pit lane. So, very difficult job.
We've heard finally from Kimi Räikkönen, who said he hasn't got a clue what happened to his wing. It just flew off. He wasn't hit. He didn't hit anything. Didn't go over the curb or break it free. It just fell off.
And that is Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
It came off in my hand, Mum.
And obviously they've decided to leave Coulthard out. Adrian knew he was taking a look at things, but decided not to bring the second car in. Let Coulthard continue to race, despite the concern over what could have gone wrong with the wing on Kimi Räikkönen's car. And there we see David Coulthard.
Now is David Coulthard turning in some quick laps here to try and get some distance between himself and the Renaults. Have both stopped.
Now we got the slow-mo replay that we got together of the Williams pit stop. So let's just see what went off there. We just caught it. Now you watch. There's that bizarre pneumatic jack that on the front that Williams used. They're unique in using that hole. But watch, it's the right front that's given all the problem. Now the jack's released. That was it, yeah. Funny, that old jack, they've been using that for years and years, and everybody's got off that to a lightweight titanium quick release thing that is so much quicker. But you know, that's the old steady ways of Williams. It's always worked for us, and we don't want to change it now.
11-second lead behind David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher, but only because at this point Coulthard has not come in. This is Nick Heidfeld, who was running in third spot after some of the pit stops, and will now rejoin after not a bad stop, 8 seconds. It'll be interesting to see where he comes out in relation to Juan Montoya because of Montoya's slow stop.
So David Coulthard doing exactly what they did last year, having this late pit stop strategy.
All right,
maybe
he on a one-stop?
Just going to say, maybe McLaren's on a one-stop.
Of course, now that we've said that, he'll pull in the next lap.
McLaren were working on this. You remember in the morning warm-up there, McLaren were working on full tanks and scrub tyres for this sort of situation, perhaps. Well, maybe that's exactly what they're doing. It looks to me... Oh, sorry, it's David Coulthard's girlfriend there, a slight distraction.
Yes.
Anyway, back to race action. And
Wake up.
I think the tyres are really starting to suffer now. You watch the tyre grading, you watch the patches, the contact patches and the grooves on the McLaren's tyres now, on DC's tyres, when he goes under braking. You see how the rubber's moving across there under graining.
I tell you, the track, when you saw that, unless it is the McLaren, when you looked at those close-up shots then of the McLaren, it certainly looks like it's being affected by the bumps. And I could see his hand when he was locked on opposite, going on lock through that corner, the third corner from the end of the lap. I mean, there was a lot of reaction back through the steering wheel. That's that bumpy approach to that corner.
Yeah, look at the guy's tyres now. Yeah. They're really dropping off.
Quite a bit of pickup at the side of the road now, starting to appear where the rolled up rubber's appearing offline. There's that bumpy approach to Lancashire.
Yeah, it was, and the back end was beginning to step out a little bit there as well, wasn't it?
The track's got a real washboard there. You can see the black marks get bigger and bigger as the race goes on. It's a very washboard effect as they go into that.
Ralf Schumacher's got a pro. Was that something that he threw out of the car?
It was, yeah.
Montoya's now moved into the second spot and moved past him.
I don't know whether or not that was something that flew into the car. It looked like a front wing end plate or something like that probably got into the cockpit, being thrown up off the track.
And he threw it out.
Wow. And David Coulthard has come into the pits, pitting out of the second spot. So much for the one-stop strategy. Get the revs up. And Ralf Schumacher coming into the pits. Now, is this a stop or is this a crisis? Nope, he is.
No, he's... Oh, they're looking around the front suspension. I don't know whether or not that's... Well, it's a nose change. Right, you've got to get the front stand out, boys. And they've still got no left front tyre on the car. But you remember that there is a low stand under that car. And they've got to get the jack in as well. If the front wing is on, gentlemen, you need to put the front jack on the car. You need... Oh, they've got a quick release on the jack. Hey, is that quick? Is that a trick thing? They've developed a jack just to change.
Oh, that's right to his front wing.
Well, it must have been that, and then the wing came up into the cockpit.
This is on board with Montoya, who is right behind, so we see him just slide off.
Wow.
I'd love to see a shot from inside Ralph's car.
I wonder if he'd lost a part of his front wing before, which is what made him go off. Because he just understeered straight off the road. Or he could have been thinking, oh my God, Montoya was very, very close behind him. So maybe he was under a bit of pressure from Montoya and just went into that corner a little bit quick. That's Camp, so the right-hander at the top of the hill there, which is about 130 mile an hour corner. But certainly whatever got him onto the rough, having bounced through the grass here, that certainly administered the coup de grace to the old wing.
Well, hands off to Williams there. I was saying the old steady ways with that mechanical front jack, the pneumatic one they had, and then they've developed this little jack just to change the nose in the pit stop side there.
They're ready for anything. Ralf Schumacher now back into 13th spot as a result of that. Hopefully we'll try and figure it all out before the day's over. Don't go away. We'll be back with more from Spain. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix, and we have got a battle for third position. Jenson Button on the track in the lead in third, and right behind him, David Coulthard. As a result of those pit stops, Coulthard slightly behind Jenson Button. And this is really, as David was saying, the battle of the best Brit.
Well, we've got a replay now. We can see the situation was happening with Wout from this. Now, look at it. There is plucking the piece just off the side of the car.
That's amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
I mean, it's amazing that it stuck there. Amazing it didn't hit his helmet. Amazing that he was able to just reach over, grab it, and pull it off.
It is. It was very, very lucky it landed there, and it didn't go further into the cockpit, frankly.
Jenson Button just ahead of David Coulthard. Coulthard has already admitted his championship hopes are gone. But he says, you know what? It's not doom and gloom. He says, I'm already working on next year. We got to develop this car more, get some speed out of it. And this is a perfect opportunity to show that, you know what? They haven't lost anything to the Renault. Especially after that race they had at Imola, David, where he was lapped so unceremoniously by Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, but this is David Coulthard now is really giving Jenson Button a pretty hard time, and he looks to be able to hold a slightly tighter line on that Renault corner, that long right-hander, 130 mile an hour. He was definitely on a tighter line, and it's going to be interesting to see. You know, the big story is that the Mercedes engine is way down on horsepower, but certainly doesn't look like it's all that down on horsepower on the Renault, which is supposed to have good horsepower.
Jenson Button still has not gotten a podium in his career. His best finish ever is a 4th. Now, he almost had a podium at Malaysia, but because of some suspension problems at the end of the race, lost that position. I don't think he's anxious to see David Coulthard take it away from him.
I was going to say, he could be denied a podium. Now, this is the long straight. Obviously, David Coulthard right in the draft of the Renault, picking up some serious speed. Oh, here he goes. Here he goes. Here he goes. It's going to be difficult for Button to do. Oh, I think they just touched there.
I think they did. Well, what does that tell us about the lack of horsepower in the McLaren, or is that down to aerodynamics? Is the McLaren running an awful lot less wing than the Renault?
And that's now unnerved Jenson Button, or certainly put him off his stride, because Jarno Trulli is now right behind him.
Jarno Trulli had been catching up slowly but surely as those two were battling, and I was curious if he was going to take a bite out of David Coulthard, but obviously Coulthard's the man who's taken away 3rd here at the Spanish Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher leads. We'll be back.
Speed Channel's coverage of Formula One is brought to you by BMW, the ultimate driving machine, and by Prudential Financial, growing and protecting your wealth.
Taking a look at that passing in just moments ago where Jenson Button... Ooh,
absolutely classic pass there by David Coulthard. There you see the delight in the McLaren pit. That was a very close thing. The wheels touched, and then just a few moments later, Michael Schumacher lapped his brother Ralph.
Looks like Jenson Button we're riding on board with right now. This is, we didn't get a chance to see it and when it was happening, but apparently that is where Jarno Trulli was able to squeeze by Jenson Button.
I think Jenson Button's car is a little bit slow on the straight. Just a touch. And here we see that battle between Olivier Panis and Heinz-Harald Frentzen continuing. Frentzen was leading, but before the pit stops, whether it was the pit stops or a pass that we didn't see, Olivier Panis is now just leading. Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Oh, here we see the pass. Good one down into turn 1 again. Obviously, you would expect the Honda to be able to outpower the privately entered team of Arrows, but and it did.
And it did, although the Cosworth engine that was powering the Arrows along seems to be doing a particularly fine job this weekend, actually.
Michael Schumacher showing everybody how a championship is won.
Something just looked like it came off Michael Schumacher's car then. Sort of thing that looked like a wheel nut, but he could have just run over a big lump of rubber in the road as well.
You're just bound and determined that his luck is going to change, aren't you? David's been talking all week about the law of averages, and sooner or later something has to happen. You're looking for anything.
Anything I'm looking. We were talking about Michael Schumacher being able to lap the field. Obviously, the pressure is so off him now that he's probably not going to be driving anything like as hard as he could do. But he's certainly making mincemeat of the field so far, lapping Bernoldi now.
Bernoldi's in 10th spot, so he's lapping the 10th position. Next on his calendar will be Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who is in 9th. Nice to see Heinz-Harald actually having a semi-decent weekend.
Oh boy, I'll say, yeah.
So far, he's only finished one race in 11th spot. This would be his best finish if he can finish up in 9th.
Well, pit lane conversation at the moment seems to be indicating that Jensen is concerned that Coulthard clipped his front wing in that overtaking maneuver, and Coulthard has dropped back a little bit for that. Maybe he's clipped one of the end plates, fences or something, taken a little bit of the front downforce off the car, and Button's dropped off the pace as a result of that.
Button would only have himself to blame if that was the case, because Coulthard was easily passed and he made a little movement at the end of the turn. Spanish Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher is leading. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix. Rick DeBrule along with David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, and Michael Schumacher easily leading Juan Montoya in the Williams. In fact, he's got about a 35-second lead or so over the Williams. Then it goes back to David Coulthard. Big battle going on in a little further back right now between Jenson Button and Nick Heidfeld. There's concern that when Button was being passed by Coulthard, when he made that little clip in, that he may have actually hit his wing plate. And as a result, he's been slowly but surely slipping back. And Nick Heidfeld is on the verge of potentially passing him for 5th spot.
Yeah, Jenson Button, there we were talking about heading for his first podium, and within a couple of minutes of talking about his first podium, he's slipped from 3rd to 5th.
Ralf Schumacher is coming into the pits. We understand they have a new nose standing by.
Oh, well, this will be a good opportunity. Now, let's have a look at this new jack that Williams have developed, this quick-release mechanical jack, if they're going to use it. Watch for the right-hand side of the car. You can see the guy. There it is. A little tricky thing they've come up with. Like that.
Gets the job done. Now, we have to talk about a pit stop that happened just a few moments ago with Enrique Bernoldi, who was just about to be passed by Michael Schumacher. He came in total confusion.
Yeah, set your VCRs on this one, see what's going off. There's a problem with the refueling hose again. Pretty much that same consternation. You can't quite work out. It's almost as if the refueler is being told, do not refuel the car. It didn't seem to be the same panic confusion that Toyota were struggling with as Imola, but I'm not quite sure what that was all about.
That ended up being a 41-second stop, and Bernoldi did go back out.
Do you think he came in and they really just weren't ready for him or something? I don't know.
Well, it could be that, but I mean, from stop to stop, the fuel rig is immediately prepared, for that eventuality, but maybe the guy behind him was saying, we've got a problem with the delivery valve on the refueling hose, do not connect it. Maybe that's what the situation was. Of course, we're only second guessing because we haven't got the radio communication that the Arrows mechanics have.
And there is Olivier Panis, who's in 8th spot. Right behind him, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who's actually got a race on his hands today.
He's having a good day. Olivier Panis, too, not having a bad day. Certainly better than Villeneuve, who's quite a long way behind him. Villeneuve, a past winner of this race, and in fact was on the podium last year in the BAR Honda. His first podium for BAR.
Irvine into the pits. It seems going
exceptionally
slow. Yeah,
I have a feeling this car may be headed to the garage.
Yeah.
That doesn't look right, does it?
Well,
I mean, I know there's a speed limit and all that, but that seems to be...
Yeah.
Pedro De La Rosa said they think they're about 2 months away from that car being anywhere close to competitive. And the battle for 5th and 6th has just come into the pits. Both Jenson Button and Nick Heidfeld. There's Nick Heidfeld's car.
So this is a crucial pit stop.
Well, just there he goes, yeah.
Whoa, side by side.
Oh, come on, boys, back to the cars.
Oh, what are we doing looking at that for?
And there we see Nick Heidfeld ahead of Jenson Button, and wait till they get to the point where they can start moving fast.
Well,
But remember, Jenson Button is saying he's having problems potentially with that right front end plate, but he almost tries to take a look there, David.
He definitely had a serious think about going down the inside. If he's going to do it, he needs to do it right now.
He was having a look down the inside, going down the pit lane, I think.
Yeah, he was. They were side by side on the pit lane.
They were. Truly in the pits. P4 is just coming to the pits from. Well, they've changed tyres and is away.
Fairly quick stop. No great crisis, and he's back out. 8.4 seconds. Meanwhile, Ralf Schumacher tootling around at the back of the pack. He is in 13th.
Panis is in the pits now as well. Panis is in.
Olivier Panis in the BAR.
And they're looking like they're getting ready for Heinz-Harald Frentzen there.
9.6 second stop. If Frentzen can make a fast stop, that may be the difference in the position. Not a points-paying position, but there's always honor at stake.
Oh.
Olivier Panis slowing right after his pit stop.
The best.
He hasn't even come back onto the track.
The best running Honda there. They're both Jordans out. Panis up holding their honor. Running very strongly, and now he's out.
And Olivier Panis still has not finished a single race this year. In fact, I believe Enrique Bernoldi is the other driver who hasn't finished a race. Neither of them have done it.
Well, there's a replay of Panis pulling off in the BAR. No sign of smoke or anything, so I'm not entirely sure what that was all about.
Both Felipe Massa and Heinz-Harald Frentzen have also come into the pits. Massa was up in the 5th spot when he came in. Heinz-Harald obviously was back in 8th. And there's Heinz-Harald's pit stop. Felipe Massa's already gone by. 9.8 seconds, nothing spectacular, but probably not enough to lose him a position. In fact, the question is, will he stay on the lead lap? He was just at the tail end of the lead lap, and it's very possible he may have been lapped by Michael Schumacher while he was in. Juan Montoya comes in for his second stop.
Boy, that pit lane is awfully narrow when they rocket down there before they get to the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. They go around that very tight right hand, and it's only just a bit wider than the car. Alan McNish, the Scotsman, in there for his pit stop.
Oh boy, oh boy, no! Now, what were we just saying? The guy had not disconnected the refueling hose. Now, that was Chief Mechanic Carl Gaydon down on the floor there, the car on over him. It is such a dangerous position down there, but you've got to keep the guy with his foot on the brakes.
Oh, I think
problem always commenced when you couldn't get the refueling hose off. They do. Do you know, I was just about to say that all through this race, I've seen about 5 or 6 refuelers have trouble disconnecting the fuel hose. Now, remember, all the equipment is produced by Intertechnique. I wonder whether or not they've reissued a new supply of refueling equipment for all the teams, and they're just having a little bit of interference problem on the refueling hose. Look at it, there it is.
Oh.
It didn't run over his ankle. No. It only ran over his foot. So
the lollipop man, you saw the chief mechanic there on the floor, lifted that board up. Now, you all know the situation. When the board comes up for a split second, the driver's gone. That's his signal to go. That's the whole point of having the guy there on the lollipop.
Yeah.
He put the board down too late. Exactly that happened with Ferrari.
Why did he lift the board?
Well, you see the refueling man come up to the first click. You watch the, we're going to try and get another replay of this now. Watch the refueling hose come up once, click 1. There. Well, in fact, you didn't really see it move an awful lot, but I mean...
And there's two. That other guy was nearly run over in the yellow uniform at the back by the back wheel.
Boy, oh boy.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Poor old Carl, the chief mechanic, has been with that team for absolute donkey's years.
David Coulthard, who was up in second spot. Now let's let's see how quickly can he get out because of that slow Montoya stop and whether this is going to determine who's in second spot. Fairly quick stop, 7.8 seconds. I think that's Juan Montoya on the front straightaway. And meanwhile, we've got Michael Schumacher coming in.
Well, again, I have to say that the McLaren guy pulling out didn't really do a very clean job of getting the hose out. I suspect there's probably some slight interference problem with the refueling couplings on all the cars.
Well, let's hope this one goes smoothly.
Boy, but it's so important for everybody to be coordinated so that when the lollipop man lifts it off, you've got to make sure that they are ready to go.
Absolutely.
All right, here's the question is who is in second place? We see DC on the track. Question is, where did he get out? Was Montoya able to get by? And apparently he was. Coulthard back in third spot. All things considered, not a bad finish if he finishes there, considering where they've been all weekend.
Boy, and where he thought he was going to end up.
So it's Michael Schumacher ahead of Juan Montoya, David Coulthard, Jarno Trulli, Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber up to fifth, and Jenson Button, who may or may not be having some problems with that front wing end plate, is back in sixth. Steve?
Yeah, we're going to try and get another replay together, Rick, of this Williams pit stop. You can see the medics going in to have a look at Carl there. Carl Gaydon, the chief mechanic. Let's have a look at this. There's the pneumatic jack. Now watch the pit stop guy, the one at the front of the car with the flag, tips it over. That's the first gear indication. He shouldn't have done it. I don't know what caught him off guard there, whether his eyes were brought to the right, but
what's even worse is he stepped right into the car.
Well, what he tried to do, of course, is stop the car. He saw his error and tried to put the board down to stop the car going forward, but you move forward 6 inches, that's enough. You move forward a meter.
Yeah.
And there was a little extra activity during that pit stop because they made a wing adjustment on the left front of that car. Well, and you could see they make the wing adjustment. He moves off to the side, and the pit board man was looked off to the side for just a moment and then looked back. But you had so much stuff going on, it was a little more activity.
It could well be that Carl Gaydon's attention was diverted from the refueling operation, thinking that had finished, by watching the guys doing the wing change, thinking that would be the longest operation. And maybe he pulled the lollipop up thinking that wing change was done and the car was free to go, but
and that is Felipe Massa chasing down Jenson Button.
And we saw Felipe Massa 2 weeks ago put a dynamic pass on Jarno Trulli in the other Renault with just a couple of laps to go at the Imola Grand Prix. Maybe he's going to do the same thing, and of course it's very, very important because this is for 6th spot and a point.
That's exactly right, and I have a feeling Felipe Massa is saying, you know what, I did it once before and I didn't get any points for it. Now's the time to make that move for points. We're seeing another replay. This is where you can see his foot go underneath the tire.
Well, he stepped right into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see him putting the board back down again, but to step into it, well, you know, I think just outside the picture, but just out of the picture behind these two is a certain red car coming up to lap them. There it is.
There you see Felipe Massa looking inside. Jenson Button not giving anything up.
Nor is Felipe Massa, 21 last Thursday. Oh, terrific.
And yet Jenson Button still has the spot. We got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back because this is a great battle between Jenson Button, Felipe Massa, at stake 1 point in the World Championship. We'll be right back. Back here at the Spanish Grand Prix, you haven't missed anything. The battle continues, only it's tightened up a little bit with the spot behind. You're seeing 6th, 7th. That's Felipe Massa right there. And right behind, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Arrows is just about to catch up. Because those two were duking it out, he was able to close the gap.
He certainly has. That was the red car I thought was Michael Schumacher coming to lap them. In fact, it's Heinz-Harald Frenzen's catching up. They're all looking pretty evenly matched. Massa did a very daring inside pass of Button, and they went round that long right-hander side by side, but Button still managed to stay in front. So Massa has dropped back a little bit here to regroup and have another go. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, the more experienced of this trio. Jenson Button, 22. And Massa, 21 last Thursday. So tremendously young drivers duking out here. And of course, obviously, Heinz-Harald Frentzen significantly older than them. I mean, he's a really old coot. He's 34.
Ancient.
Positively ancient.
Well, good news filtering in from the pit lane is that Carl Gaydon, the chief mechanic from Williams, has been taken to the medical centre with a suspected sprained ankle, that sort of thing. They're bandaging it up, but, you know, it looks good. It doesn't look like it's a serious injury, so... But it certainly could have been, oh boy.
Well, and what the scary thing was a situation where the fuel guy was about to get knocked under the rear tire.
Oh boy, it could have broken his left ankle just so easy.
There they are now looking at that left ankle. The thing that always frightens me about these accidents is, you know, that the fuel hose could come disconnected from the coupling when that car drives off, and all of a sudden you've got a rig full of fuel flowing.
A lot of fuel, very fast flowing.
Jos Verstappen all over again. Well, we thought we had a battle here, but it seems to have kind of leveled out. And in fact, if anything, it looks like Heinz Harald may be trying to catch up to Felipe Massa. We're going to take a quick break because Michael Schumacher's coming up to catch that pack. We'll be back in just a moment. Back here at Spain, the three-way battle for 5th, 6th, and 7th is Jenson Button. Actually, it's 6th, 7th, 8th. Important to point out for 1 point. We've got Jenson Button in 6th, Felipe Massa in 7th, and Massa is now under attack by Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
He's under severe attack from Heinz-Harald Frentzen. The Arrows with the Cosworth engine, the same engine as in the Jaguar, obviously going very well. And of course, they've had their first test of the year about a week ago at Silverstone. Got a new floor, got a new wing, and their first test. It's just absolutely revitalized that car, hasn't it, Steve?
It has indeed, and I guess, David, you know, tell us from a driver's perspective, if you're Massa, now of course you've got to look in your rear view mirrors and control the car behind, and you've still got to try and attack the car in front. How difficult's that?
It's very difficult because he really wants to get around that car in front, because that's 1 point. It's going to be difficult for him, and as you say, he's got his work cut out now, trying to whether to attack or defend.
And he's just a kid, 21 years old. Time to take a look at the Bridgestone race reset so we can explain how we've gotten to this position. Pretty easy. Michael Schumacher from the start. No lead changes. He's controlled the entire way. He's led every one of the 54 laps, and right now he has got a 41-second lead over Juan Montoya. Montoya, who had a longer pit stop as a result of the problems that we saw, did not lose his second spot. He continues to lead David Coulthard by about 5 seconds.
Boy, Frensen's got a tremendous run here. They're coming down to that La Cacha, that bumpy corner, the left-hander. Up the hill here, then there's the 3 right-handers, one after another, leading onto the straight. If he can get right under the wing of Massa as they exit that last corner onto the straight, that'll give him a tremendous tow down into turn 1. And then, of course, they're all going to be jumbled up soon, because right behind them is Michael Schumacher now catching up with this group. Yeah, he didn't come out of there quite quick enough. He's just a little bit too far back. There comes Schumacher at the back of the picture, but he's quicker through those some of those tighter infield corners, but just wasn't close enough to Massa to really maximize the draft.
You know, just watching that shot coming down to the end of the main straight there, you see how the rear wings are really moving around under the suspension, under the braking loading and the aerodynamic loading. No wonder we're having so many wing failures. I've never seen that sort of movement before. It's a real high sort of frequency judder going through the thing.
Which, of course, is worse as you go back in the field, because the air, as you're the 3rd car in the row, because the air is so disturbed.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who has 3 wins in his career, a couple of poles. He's started 134 Grand Prix. Ahead of him, the kid, some people say may be a Ferrari driver next year, although those rumors seem to be quieting down. But apparently there's talk that one rumor had him actually already under contract. Other rumors say that maybe he's the guy that Ferrari may be looking at to replace Rubens Barrichello. Either way, he's definitely proving he belongs in Formula One. There was a lot of doubt about that before the season started.
He had a huge moment right there on Friday, but kept the whole thing on the road somehow. Whoa, Heinz-Harald Frenzen's car looking very twitchy around there, losing a lot of downforce being that close to Massa as they go through that fast 140-mile-an-hour bend. But just the Ferrari engine in the Sauber, obviously the match for the Cosworth. This is actually helping Jenson Button, who's pulled away a few feet, and it is a few feet. I'll tell you what, though, Massa is very quick through 1, 2, and 3, this Renault corner. Very quick.
We just saw something pop up there a moment ago. The fastest top speed of the day was Kimi Räikkönen at 201 miles an hour. Now, was that before or after the wing came off?
Yeah. Oh, whoa!
Jenson Button, is that a problem? Must be, because Felipe Massa just flew right through, as did Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Oh, wow.
I don't know whether he selected a neutral. I mean, the car's picked up pace immediately again, but obviously a big problem, whether or not he went for a gear and the box balked into zero and no drive for a second, but he's obviously got it back.
Big blow for Jenson Button not so long ago, about 20 minutes ago. He was looking in a very strong third spot. Been dicing strongly all afternoon, but since David Coulthard passed him, he's sort of been going downhill. And the reason that Coulthard passed him, and maybe that he's got a bit of a problem with his car, I don't know. It seems a bit slow to me.
Keep your eye on these rear wing end plates if you get a good shot. The main plane's going down into the end of the straight here.
Waving the flags, telling them that something's going to happen. Let's see what happens. Does he just cook it a little bit going in?
It could be. He went very wide, didn't he? Got out on the grey stuff. Maybe just went wide, went a bit too deep, got in onto the marbles and had to lift right out of it.
But there was no brake, there was no wheel smoke, tyre smoke from locking the brakes up.
No, I think, he's got a problem. Obviously, he's dropped right back now.
He wasn't exactly under attack at that exact moment in time. Michael Schumacher starting to catch up with these guys. We're going to take a quick break. Spanish Grand Prix on Speed Channel will continue. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix. Rick de Bruyne, David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, along with Felipe Massa and Heinz-Harald Frentzen as they duke it out for the last points-paying position. And Heinz-Harald is not letting Felipe Massa get away. He can catch up on the tight sections, but he just doesn't seem to be able to do it in the long sections.
No, he's, unfortunately for him, his weakest two corners are the last two, the real fast right-handers. And every time he gets onto the straight, there's too much daylight between him to be able to use the draft to the best of his ability, and which leaves him unable to challenge going into turn one, which is really the only place around here that you've got a serious chance of getting past somebody. So a bit tough on Heinz-Harald, that his best corners are the wrong corners.
About 5 laps to go here at the Spanish Grand Prix, 65-lap race. Saw a great battle a moment ago while we were in a break between Ralf Schumacher and Mika Salo, which was very interesting, if you can imagine that. It's for last place on the track, the battle for 11th and 12th, but Salo was not letting Ralf Schumacher get away, which makes you think that there's a reason that they've changed two noses on Schumacher's car, and they may not have still solved all the problems. Juan Montoya in second.
It could well be that Ralph's suffering from a little bit of suspension geometry failing, alignment on the tracking or something of that description after that wing failure has just nudged something out of kilter on the front end.
Well, he went bounding through that grass and over the edge of that curb, which could have easily jumped over the back of the curb, which could have easily got some alignment deranged. Juan Pablo Montoya setting very competitive times with David Coulthard, almost exactly the same. Just in front of Coulthard, pulled away a little bit after their pit stop, where they had that almost a tragedy in the pits where he ran over the pit marshal. A bit of a cluster in the pits.
If this is the way they finish, Juan Montoya is going to move into second in the championship, be ahead of his teammate Ralf Schumacher. Michael Schumacher, obviously, he's already had 34 points in the championship so far. This would move him up to 44 if he wins this race. Ralf Schumacher had 20. He'll probably stay there. And Juan Montoya, who had 17, will move up to 23.
And looking at this race in the wider frame of things, what do these teams do to go back after this race and sit down and think, what are we going to have to do to get onto the pace of what Ferrari are doing?
I mean, if it finishes like this, Michael Schumacher is going to be able to DNF in the next 2 races, and Juan Montoya is going to have to win them both, and he'll still be 1 point behind. We're only 5 races in.
Maybe Michael could take a brief vacation, skip a couple of races, stay on the yacht in Monaco.
Austria coming up. Well, I mean, there was a time when one would look at Austria and think it was probably going to be a BMW circuit. But the trouble with Austria at this time of year, it can be pretty nippy there, which may not be very good for Michelin again.
Yeah.
There we see David Coulthard in a strong third spot, only about 3/4 of a minute behind. was not lapped. We thought at one stage that Schumacher might lap pretty well everybody. McLaren, the winningest team here in Spain. They've won this race gobs of times. How many have they won?
Mika Hakkinen won 3 in a row and could have won 4 in a row.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for last year's fiasco.
Car broke down with just 5 turns to go with Mika Hakkinen leading. Michael Schumacher got the victory. This year, very different story. Michael Schumacher has the pole, has the fastest lap, and very likely is going to win. And that looks, was someone slowing there? Was that Jon? That looked like Jarno Trulli slowing down. That would put Felipe Massa in 5th and Frentzen in 6th. Yeah, there he is slowing him. That's Jenson Button, actually.
There's something obviously curious going off with this. I suspect they've got a hydraulic problem or something, gear selection. I think that's probably what happened before.
What happened when it slowed up suddenly like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they got the problem in there.
You know, the transmission selector on these cars now are all controlled by hydraulics. It's basically the same system which works on motorbike. It's the rotary selector that an average motorbike would work on. High pressure hydraulics are controlling the selector mechanism, about 3,000 psi of fluid in there, and that's all controlled by Moog valves and electronics, of course. And you know, you only need one little thing to go wrong on that and the whole system will fail.
So how disappointed with Jenson Button with just 3 or 4 laps left to go. Just not long ago he was in a strong 3rd spot. He's had a very good weekend. He's been strong all weekend. He was quick this morning in the warm-up. Very good in qualifying yesterday. Really looked like they were going to have a good weekend. But that has brought Felipe Massa up into the points now.
And in fact, Jarno Trulli, I mentioned that earlier, he has slowed down and is now back in 7th spot. So Felipe Massa is 5th, Heinz Harald is 6th with the final point, and Jarno Trulli in the Renault now out of the points.
So Renault's really good day, unfortunately coming unraveled with just 2 laps left. But looking at last year when Mika Hakkinen was leading strongly to within half a lap at the end, obviously nothing is over till it's over.
Tell that to Juan Montoya right now.
And Michael Schumacher must be thinking that too right now.
Absolutely.
Hope the same thing doesn't happen to me as happened to Mika last year.
You get that big lead, the last lap. You start to hear every little creak in the car, every little noise. You worry about David Hobbs' prediction that sooner or later something's got to go wrong.
Well, if Heinz Harald Frentzen finishes 6th in this race and scores a point, there'll only be 2 teams that haven't scored points at all this year, and that'll be the Jordan Honda and the BAR Honda. How things have changed for Honda on the Formula One engine front.
It's a lot of money for Honda to be spending. What, $200 million to be in Formula One without a single point after 5 races?
Not a good deal.
Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher leads on the very last lap at the Spanish Grand Prix. Let's talk about the historic significance of this. This could easily be an indicator that that 5th World Championship is not that far away, Steve. 5 World Championships.
It's going to be a historic moment. Remember, Juan Fangio has got 5 already, so he'll be equal in Fangio's record of 5. But I never thought we'd see another driver in my lifetime get close to Fangio's record of 5, and I can see no reason that would make Michael want to get out of this at this stage. I feel sure he's going to be wanting to get that 6th if it all comes together at the end of the year.
Well, of course, the other thing too is if he wins this race, that'll be 12 out of 12 races that he's finished in Spain, and he's scored points in every single one of them. He scored 1 on his field. God, he's waving to the crowd. I remember Nigel Mansell doing that in Canada.
Yeah, in 91, he flicked the ignition switch off. Yeah.
Oh, well, here he is, so he's safe now. Well, how absolutely incredible. The first guy ever to win 4 Spanish Grand Prix as well.
Michael Schumacher, the winner. The checkered flag flies on time. Crew watches as Juan Montoya powers around.
That'll be another good
36
drive,
seconds
Michael.
back.
Well done. Jolly good job.
Thank you, Ross. We appreciate that. Do we do a Jean Todt impersonation? Can we get that one?
I can't do that one.
Jean Todt.
Wow. That ties Ferrari with McLaren for the most constructors wins at the Spanish Grand Prix as well. Montoya comes in second. No doubt very happy with the 6 points that's going to give him, but at the same time a lot of thought going on in the Williams BMW camp, thinking, good Lord alive, just what are we going to have to do to pick up 40 seconds in a race?
I mean, we have to.
It's not a few seconds, we're talking about 40 seconds.
And there's Ralph, it looks like the right bank of the engine's let go on the BMW on the... Oh.
Boy.
How close to the end was he?
Well, considering where he was at back in 10th spot, it really didn't matter a lot. It just simply means that Mika Salo is going to move up into 10th. By the way, Jarno Trulli, we understand, dropped out. So that actually is going to move everybody up even one more spot.
But I think we have to say now we're looking at a position of dominance of Ferrari now that McLaren had in the 1988 season. I mean, McLaren took 15 out of 16 races then. All right, that's not going to be the situation here. But I mean, the Ferrari chassis, the team as a whole is just an absolute class of its own, exactly as McLaren was back then in 88, 89, that period.
It could be 16 out of 17.
But of course the thing is too, you really got to have a bit of luck. When you look at Michael Schumacher here, he's won 4 of the first 5 races. He's got 44 points. Rubens Barrichello has still got 6. I mean, it is just, oh, look at that fluid coming out. Big blow up. Very impressive. I like that.
That's the right-hand bank. And
hey, brother, you want to ride home or not?
No.
Mike, Ralph's like, no. I don't want to go back for this one. I think I'd take the ride back. How about you guys?
I would.
Last year, Mika Hakkinen got a ride back from David Coulthard. Sauber guys very happy, as well they should be. Nick Heidfeld, we haven't talked about him a whole lot towards the end of the race because very quietly cruising around in 4th spot. Felipe Massa in 5th. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen, the Arrows, manages to get the 6th spot, the last point.
Well, that is an absolutely fantastic achievement, really, for Arrows. I mean, they were nowhere, struggling with financial backing, and they laid off a lot of the test team in the winter season. One test only last week at Silverstone, as we said, and all of a sudden they come here and bang, revisions to the Cosworth engine, aerodynamics tweaks to the diffuser and the front wing, and they're on the pace.
And in fact, that is the very first point for Arrows this year, because Enrique Bernoldi hasn't finished a race. Frentzen had only finished one, and that was in 11th. So this is the very first point. And when we talk about the travel money that gets distributed to the teams.
The thing is that the Jordan team, which was supposed to be such a powerhouse and just 3 years ago was an incredible powerhouse, they haven't scored a point this year, and nor have BAR Honda. So, boy, those guys have got some serious thinking and work to do to at least get a point, for goodness sake. But like I say, or as my mum used to say, better to be born lucky than rich. And I'll tell you what, you're looking at one very lucky guy down here. He's obviously incredibly talented, the best out there at the moment, there's no doubt about it. But he does have that unbelievable luck that follows him everywhere.
There's those
David
who say
Coulthard jumped into a positive 4th in the championship now. He's got 9 points to Michael Schumacher's 44, so he still could mount a challenge. Not quite sure when.
Anything is possible. Michael Schumacher, the winner here at Spain. A very happy winner. We'll come back and hear from everybody in just a moment. Marching onto the victory podium, it's Michael Schumacher, Juan Montoya, and David Coulthard. King Juan Carlos of Spain on the podium to congratulate Michael Schumacher in the air. King Juan Carlos handing, that's a pretty cool looking trophy. Designed like a steering wheel. We've been talking so much about it as he hands it to Michael Schumacher. That's the biggest steering wheel he's ever held.
Yeah, this is great, isn't it? It's got all the buttons and everything on it. Very, very cool, that. There's no doubt about it.
That's Paolo Martinelli, the engine designer, receiving the Constructors' Award for Ferrari at this race. He used to be described as the backroom boys, but they're not really backroom boys any longer. They're sort of national heroes, aren't they? There he is. There's the fellow who designed the 051 engine, 830, 840 brake horsepower.
And so unbelievably reliable.
That's the key to it.
I mean, the thing turns over at 18,500 RPM, gives all that horsepower, and goes forever. It's unbelievable. I tell you what, David Coulthard and Montoya are getting sick of hearing the German and the Italian national anthem, I bet. But at the moment, I don't see what they're going to hear anything else for some time to come yet.
And you realize that when it comes to winning, that's all we've heard this year, because the 5 national anthems have been Michael Schumacher 4 times and Ralf Schumacher once.
Yeah.
Only once did we hear another national anthem. There goes the champagne. When we had the British national anthem being played for the constructors in Malaysia.
The King rushing off the podium there. No doubt the boys were told, do not spray the King, even if you do think it would be a bit of a lark.
Now the ceremonial dropping of the champagne to the crew below. This has become a sport in its own. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Now it's time to hear from these guys when we come back. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix. See the cool new grandstand cover that they've erected. They've improved the grandstand. In fact, they were expecting a record crowd out here today, and looks like they got it. And while Michael Schumacher walked off with it, there were some other interesting battles and some interesting things that happened that made this race worthwhile, wouldn't you say, David?
Absolutely, a terrific battle there for, 5th, 6th and 7th in the middle there between the 2 Renaults. Well, there was a good battle actually all the time between David Coulthard and the Renaults when he was the meat in that Renault sandwich earlier on. It was very, very closely matched. And then as the race unfolded, Felipe Massa started to exert himself and finally, scored himself a couple of points there. So that was a great run for Felipe Massa and the Sauber team, who one believes is a little bit beleaguered by a lack of cash. And obviously every point they can get is going to help them there to try and get some sponsorship.
Michael Schumacher, winner of the Spanish Grand Prix. Juan Pablo Montoya in 2nd and David Coulthard 3rd for McLaren. Michael, that was a truly dominant drive. The first 2 stints of the race, you were pulling away at almost precisely 1 second a lap. Masterful.
Yeah, I mean, we were about 1 second ahead in qualifying yesterday. Sort of wasn't 100% clear what it's going to be in the race, whether we maybe fall back in the race a little bit over the distance, which we have seen in the past several times. But then I have to say that the tyres Bridgestone has developed have performed very well in qualifying, which was a little bit lacking last race, but kept their consistency for the race, and that's something we're very happy about. And then our car especially is obviously simply the right circuit for it. I mean, our guys, our team, they have done a tremendous job over winter time, and again, as I said, this circuit shows really what our engineers have done.
Now, Rubens Barrichello, your teammate, didn't even make the start. He had, I believe, gear selection problems. You had a hydraulic problem at the end of the warm-up this morning. Did you have any concerns that you might be on the sidelines too as well?
Yeah, obviously, as we had the problem with Rubens, we sort of tried to take care about whatever he have done. I don't actually know 100%, but we sort of did a safe pit stop and did certain things a little bit more careful in order to make sure not to happen the same thing. But yeah, it's sort of really bad luck for Rubens. I mean, everything has gone wrong this year so far, has gone wrong for him. But you sort of can't really think it will always go that way. You have to, you know that one day it's going to hit yourself. We simply hope and try our best not to let it happen. And again, sorry for Rubens.
Michael, thank you. Juan Pablo in the points for the first time in a while, but a long way behind Michael.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty difficult race for us, and I think we made the best of what we had. In the pits, we hit. I hit one of my crew chief, and hopefully he's all right. I heard actually he's all right, so bit of a sorry there. But apart from that, the race went pretty well. We struggled all weekend with pace, and I think I gotta say I'm very pleased actually to get out of here with second place.
Now, you've touched on your problem at the second pit stop, but what exactly happened? It looked as though the lollipop man lifted his lollipop just that little bit too soon.
Yeah, I think he lifted it because he thought I could go, and he tried to stop me actually with his body. It was, I managed to pull the clutch in as fast as I could, but I already had run over him, and that was it really.
Thanks very much, Juan Pablo. David, starting 7th on the grid, did you ever think you might be up here in the unilateral conference in 3rd place?
Well, I knew it would only come through other people having problems, and clearly that's what happened today. The only battle I really had was with Jensen, and then after the first pit stop I was able to overtake him down into the first corner. But other than that, we were just sort of having a lonely battle. So I benefited from other people's misfortune, but you accept that because that's motor racing.
Now, this morning we saw Mark Webber's rear wing come off on the start-finish straight. Early in the race, your teammate Kimi Räikkönen, he had his rear wing collapse. What did the team tell you while you were still lapping out there on the circuit?
Well, they didn't tell me anything. It was quite obvious what had happened, and there's no reason to pull the car out or for me to be worried about it because we haven't had a wing failure this year at all. Obviously they'll look at the remains of what's actually there and try and understand exactly why it failed, whether it was fatigue or whether it was manufacturing. But unfortunately, those are just the stresses and strains that are on Grand Prix cars. Occasionally they fail.
David, thank you. Michael, back to you. Last spring, it was the man next to you, Mr. Coulthard, who won in Austria, heading there 2 weeks' time. What chance do you think you have?
Well, it's all a bit
Carl's a hard man, and
the tyre situation there, which tyre is going to compete better, perform better, and that's something we have to see. We don't know. We believe we have a very competitive package overall, but it's sort of the question: how good can the others be? We have seen, obviously, here we were sort of dominant, but we have seen other races like Brazil where it was a close fight, and we have no idea what it's going to be in Austria like.
Michael, thank you very much. Now, Michael again and Ruben.
And the scary thing is, the Michelin guys don't know if it's going to be a good battle or not in Austria. We'll come back with more from the Spanish Grand Prix in just a moment. The winner here in Spain, but coming up in 2 weeks, live coverage of the Austrian Grand Prix. Practice begins at 7 a.m. Eastern on Friday, May 10th. Qualifying is Saturday the 11th. That'll be at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And the Acura pre-race show begins at 7:30 on Sunday morning, May 12th. We'll be back with the Acura Key Move in just a moment. Welcome back. This is what we're going to call the key move of the race, guys. Didn't affect the outcome, but it was scary.
It was very scary, and it nearly affected that second position. There you see the man with the lollipop being run over, and I tell you what Montoya said in that driver interview, that he pulled the clutch in quick. He certainly did pull that thing in incredibly quickly.
Now, that's the Acura Key Move. The good news is the guy on the ground already had his boot on by the end of the race, we're hearing, and that he is going to be okay. Let's take a look at the results from the race. Michael Schumacher, the winner, ahead of Montoya.
Yeah, a long way ahead of Montoya. David Coulthard luckily scraping in third there. Nick Heidfeld and Massa having two good scoring points here for Sauber. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen, the first points of the year for Arrows. A great result for those 4th, 5th and 6th guys. Obviously helped by some of the early retirements of the hotter guys.
Looked like it was going to be a good day for the Renaults, but both of them had troubles basically dropping out at the end. Bier almost in the points, but couldn't make it happen. Alan McNish back in 8th.
Both Toyotas finishing, but Trulli and Jensen Button looking like they were both going to score good points, and within 20 minutes of the end of the race, both out.
The thing to remember is Rubens Barrichello never actually started the race. Car wouldn't start on the grid. As a result, they pulled him into the garage, and he was the first man out as a result of this. Let's go to the constructors' points. No big shock here. It is Ferrari that is, or driver's points we'll start with, I should say. Michael Schumacher way ahead, 44-23.
So John Montoya's got to win the next two races, and Michael Schumacher DNF, and he'll still be behind him in points.
All right, now let's talk about the constructor points, where we have The Ferrari well ahead, 50 to 43, but Williams not that far, so not that bad. Well, that's going to do it for the Spanish Grand Prix. We'll be back again in 2 weeks from Austria. Live practice coverage Friday morning at 7 o'clock. Live qualifying air at 7 a.m. And then the race on the 12th at 7:30. For David Hobbs, Rick Jabrul, I'm Rick Jabrul. See you later, Steve Natchett.